Have you ever noticed how heavy the word yes can feel when your heart whispers no? It's strange. Our whole lives we are taught that agreeing makes us kind, that pleasing makes us loved, that bending makes us worthy. And yet, deep inside, every forced yes tears away a small piece of our soul. We nod to things we don't want. We show up in places we don't belong. We give time we don't have. And then, when we are finally alone, we drown in a guilt that should never have been ours to carry. The guilt of saying no is not born from selfishness. It is born from conditioning. A society that convinces us we must always be available, agreeable, and accommodating, even at the cost of ourselves. But what if the real betrayal is not in denying others, but in abandoning ourselves? What if every unwanted yes is a silent wound, and every courageous no is a scar that heals us? This is not about rejection. This is about survival, about reclaiming the only thing no one else can live for you, your life. Most people grow up with the belief that saying no is wrong. We are told from the earliest days of childhood to be polite, to share, to agree, to not cause discomfort. A child who resists is labeled difficult, while the one who complies is praised. That training doesn't vanish when we grow older. It solidifies into a silent command that follows us everywhere. We say yes to requests at work even when our schedule is drowning. We say yes to friends even when exhaustion clings to our bones. We say yes to family even when our spirit needs rest. And each time we ignore the quiet voice inside that pleads for refusal, we reinforce the belief that our worth lies in how well we serve others, not in how faithfully we honor ourselves. This is the seed of guilt, not a natural response, but a learned pattern, a habit of measuring our value by how much of ourselves we sacrifice. The misconception is so deeply rooted that most of us don't even stop to question it. Society, culture, and even religion often glorify selflessness to the point of erasure, convincing us that to deny another is to wound them. But ask yourself, what kind of peace is created when you smile outwardly but rage inwardly? What kind of love is built on silent resentment? The idea that every refusal is selfish ignores a more important truth. Every unwanted yes is dishonest. A yes spoken against your will is not generosity, it is performance. It creates false harmony, an illusion that eventually shatters under the weight of your hidden frustration. The misconception teaches us to fear being perceived as unkind, while the reality is that kindness without boundaries becomes cruelty toward oneself. Philosophers across time recognized this danger. Machiavelli, often misunderstood as ruthless, pointed out a difficult truth. Being loved at all costs is dangerous, but being respected creates strength. Respect is born from clarity, from the courage to say yes only when you mean it, and no when you must. Yet emotional maturity in our modern age is often confused with endless availability. We measure goodness in the number of times we bend, rather than in the strength of standing firm. But maturity is not obedience, it is discernment. It is the understanding that a life lived without boundaries is a life lived in chains. If you cannot refuse, you do not truly choose. And choice is the essence of freedom. To mistake refusal for cruelty is to rob yourself of the dignity of deciding how your energy is spent, how your life unfolds, how your soul is preserved. What feeds the misconception is fear. Fear of losing approval, fear of disappointing, fear of standing apart. Human beings crave belonging, and belonging often feels tied to compliance. The danger is that compliance becomes the currency of connection. You feel loved not for who you are, but for how useful you remain. This is why the guilt of saying no feels like abandonment. It threatens the illusion that love depends on your constant yes. But real love, authentic connection, does not demand your silence or your servitude. It accepts your boundaries, even celebrates them. To live trapped in the misconception is to accept relationships that survive only by draining you. To break free is to discover that those who truly care will not leave when you protect yourself. They will understand you better. The misconception is reinforced by cultural narratives of the good person. Goodness is painted as endless patience, constant sacrifice, an open door that never closes. Yet what is often forgotten is that even the strongest door cannot stand forever without hinges. Boundaries are those hinges. Without them, the door falls flat, unable to support anyone. In the same way, a person who cannot say no eventually collapses. And when collapse comes, it is not gentle. It is burnout, bitterness, or quiet withdrawal. Saying no is not only an act of self-respect, it is an act of sustainability. It preserves you so that when you do give, it is genuine and powerful, not forced and hollow. The misconception poisons the well of giving, teaching us that forced generosity is noble, when in truth only chosen generosity carries meaning. There is also a hidden cruelty in the misconception, though most never see it. By teaching people to always say yes, society strips them of honesty. If I say yes to you when I do not mean it, I rob you of truth. You think I am present, but my heart is absent. You think I am willing, but my spirit resents it. Over time, this dishonesty corrodes relationships, creating distance disguised as closeness. True intimacy, whether in friendship, family, or love, thrives on honesty, and honesty sometimes sounds like no. To refuse when your soul demands it is not selfish, it is respectful to both you and the other person. It declares that you value them enough to give them your truth, even when it risks their disappointment. The misconception hides this deeper kindness, convincing you that fake compliance is love, when in reality, love without honesty is illusion. At the heart of the misconception lies the inability to bear discomfort. Saying no creates friction. It invites disappointment, criticism, or even anger. And because we are conditioned to avoid conflict, we equate that discomfort with moral failure. But discomfort is not destruction, it is simply the cost of living as yourself, rather than as someone else's expectation. Those who never dare to cause discomfort live like shadows, present but never fully real. To reject the misconception, you must embrace the truth that not every storm can be avoided, and not every face can stay smiling when you honor yourself. Yet, what is the alternative? A life of endless surrender, where you are loved for a mask and never for your true self? The misconception promises acceptance but delivers emptiness. Only by breaking it can you taste the deeper freedom of living in alignment with your own truth. Think back to the last time you said yes, when everything inside you wanted to say no. Maybe it was a friend asking for a favor you didn't have the energy to give. Maybe it was a family obligation that stole your only day of rest. Maybe it was a coworker asking you to cover for them when your own workload was already unbearable. In the moment, you smiled, you agreed, you convinced yourself it wasn't that big of a sacrifice, but later, when you were finally alone, the resentment settled in. You felt drained, used, invisible. And worse, you turned that resentment inward. Instead of asking why others demanded so much, you asked yourself why you couldn't just keep giving. That internal voice of guilt told you that your discomfort didn't matter, that their needs were bigger than yours. This is the cycle. Agreement that feels like duty, resentment that feels like poison, and guilt that feels like a chain. There are times when the smile you give hides a storm no one else can see. You sit in conversations you didn't want to have, nod through plans you don't want to keep, laugh at jokes that drain you more than they delight you. On the outside, everything looks harmonious, but inside you are unraveling. And the more you do it, the more it becomes a pattern. You become the reliable one, the agreeable one, the person who always says yes. But what few people see is that behind the mask of agreement, there is a quiet exhaustion that grows heavier with each forced commitment. It's not the act itself that destroys you, it's the betrayal of yourself. Every time you silence your no, you teach yourself that your needs are irrelevant. And the tragedy is that most people don't even realize they are doing it until the emptiness becomes unbearable. But then, contrast that with the moments you found the courage to say no. Think of the first time you set a boundary, when you felt your chest tighten with fear as the word left your lips. Perhaps you were terrified of losing someone's approval, afraid of being misunderstood, worried that others would see you as selfish. And yet, once it was spoken, a strange thing happened. The world did not end, the room did not collapse, the sky did not fall. What you felt instead was space, a lightness, a sudden realization that you had reclaimed a piece of yourself that had been missing. That moment was proof that saying no does not destroy you, it frees you. The guilt still whispered for a while, but over time it faded, and what remained was the unmistakable strength of knowing you had chosen yourself over false peace. Of course, the transformation doesn't always feel immediate. Sometimes people react with disappointment, sometimes with anger, sometimes with manipulation. They may say things like, "But you've always been there for me," or, I just don't understand why you can't help this one time. And those words sting, because they make you feel as if your refusal erased all the times you sacrificed before. But this is the hidden revelation. If a single no erases years of yes, then the relationship was never built on love, it was built on expectation. And that realization, as painful as it is a gift. It shows you who values you for your compliance and who values you for your truth. Every no you speak acts like a mirror. It reveals who was really standing beside you and who was only standing on top of you. Think of how many lives have been quietly destroyed by an inability to say no. The parent who gives endlessly until there is nothing left of their own identity. The employee who burns out from taking on work that was never theirs. The friend who becomes resentful because their generosity was taken for granted. We rarely talk about how dangerous forced agreement can be, because it looks harmless on the surface. But the cost of silencing your no is measured in years of lost energy, fractured identities, and hearts that grow heavy with resentment. When you begin to trace back your unhappiness, you often find it wasn't caused by one big betrayal but by hundreds of small ones. Each time you betrayed yourself by saying yes when you didn't mean it, each small fracture builds until you are left wondering why you feel invisible in your own life. And yet, within this pain lies an undeniable truth. Your no is not just a refusal. It is an act of self-preservation. The moments when you chose to honor yourself, even at the cost of conflict, are the moments you discovered the true weight of your own voice. Saying no is not a wall between you and others. It is a shield that guards your time, your spirit, your dignity. It does not make you cold or selfish. It makes you whole. The people who truly love you will not vanish when you set limits. They will adjust. They will respect. They will stay. And those who cannot accept your boundaries were never holding on to you. They were holding on to your compliance. Each time you realize this, you step closer to freedom, closer to authenticity, closer to a life that feels like it belongs to you. The most relatable experience of all is that deep sigh of relief after finally saying no. It is the sound of your soul unclenching. It is the silence after endless noise. It is the weight lifting from your chest as you reclaim your space in the world. In that moment, you recognize something powerful. You were never meant to live at the mercy of everyone else's demands. You were meant to live aligned with your truth. And while guilt may linger at first, it loses its grip the more you practice. Every no becomes easier, lighter, more natural. And soon, what once felt impossible begins to feel inevitable. You realize that your life, your energy, and your time are not bargaining chips to be traded away. They are sacred, and the only person who can protect them is you. There comes a point when you realize that saying no is not a rejection of others, but a declaration of your own existence. It is the moment you stop being shaped by demands and start being defined by truth. The strength of no is quiet, subtle, almost invisible to those who do not know the weight of always saying yes. But inside it feels like standing taller than you ever have, like your spine straightens and your chest finally opens to breathe. The strength of no is quiet, subtle, almost invisible to those who do not know the weight of always saying yes. To say no is to protect the fragile core of yourself that has been neglected for too long. It is not cruelty, it is preservation. It is not arrogance, it is dignity. The world may not always understand it, but you feel it instantly. The shift from being pulled apart to finally being whole again. Inner strength does not roar. It does not demand applause or recognition. It shows itself in silence, in the refusal to explain endlessly, in the decision to walk away without guilt. It is the soft but unshakable understanding that your worth does not depend on your availability. People who are strong within themselves do not scatter their yes recklessly, because they understand the value of their time and their energy. They treat their no like a sacred tool, something not to be feared but to be respected. This is strength as light, a lamp held in the dark corridors of obligation, illuminating the path back to yourself. It is not about turning your back on others, but about finally turning your face toward the parts of yourself that you've abandoned. Every scar you carry tells the story of a boundary you didn't defend soon enough. The exhaustion that once lived in your body, the resentment that once burned quietly in your chest, the loneliness you felt even in crowded rooms, these are scars carved by the absence of no. And yet scars are not just signs of suffering, they are evidence of survival. They remind you that you've endured, and that now you have the chance to choose differently. To say no is to decide that you will not collect more wounds than you need to. It is to wear your scars as symbols of wisdom, not weakness. Your no becomes the shield that prevents old injuries from reopening. Your strength is not in the absence of pain, but in the courage to stop allowing it to define the rhythm of your life. The solitude that comes with strength often feels like silence, but silence is not emptiness. Silence is clarity. It is the moment when you are no longer drowned by everyone else's voices, when the constant demands finally fade into the background and you can hear your own heartbeat again. It is in that stillness that you recognize your boundaries are not walls to keep the world out. They are walls to keep your spirit safe within. Inner strength is the ability to endure that silence without fear, to find comfort in solitude rather than panic. For in solitude you rediscover your essence, the version of you that does not need approval to feel worthy. To be strong is to sit alone, unshaken, and feel not abandoned but free. Imagery of light often comes to mind when thinking about inner strength, because strength feels like illumination. When you say no, you light a candle in a dark space within yourself, and suddenly everything hidden becomes visible. You see where you've been draining yourself, where you've allowed others to take too much, where you've neglected your own needs. The light is not harsh, it is gentle, but steady. It allows you to step forward with clarity rather than stumbling blindly in the dark. This is the essence of awakening. Not dramatic, not loud, but consistent, steady, unmovable. A no spoken from inner strength glows. It does not burn others, but it lights your way forward. Strength also carries with it an aura of stillness, not the stillness of inaction, but the stillness of unshakable presence. Think of a mountain, silent, immovable, ancient. Storms may rage, winds may howl, people may climb, but the mountain remains. This is the energy of inner strength. When you learn to say no without guilt, you embody that mountain-like stillness. People may push against you, argue, question, or attempt to persuade, but their storms no longer decide your direction. Dearest, you may put it to me, but I can't put it on you. You remain anchored in self-worth, unmoved by the temporary tempests of others' expectations. To be strong in this way is to live beyond the reach of manipulation, beyond the reach of constant guilt, beyond the reach of fear. The essence of strength is the recognition that you are enough as you are. You do not need to buy worth with endless sacrifice. You do not need to barter for love by giving more than you can afford. You do not need to apologize for existing within limits. To say no is to finally admit that you are human, not infinite. It is to embrace the truth that your worth has never been tied to your usefulness, but to your being. Inner strength whispers what the world often forgets. You are already enough, even when you refuse, even when you protect yourself, even when you step back. Your strength does not require permission, validation, or proof. It exists quietly, steadily, waiting for you to claim it each time you choose the honesty of no over the dishonesty of forced yes. The weight of guilt has been with you for so long that it may feel natural, almost inevitable. Every time you said no, a voice rose inside whispering that you were selfish, unkind, ungrateful. But pause for a moment and see that guilt for what it really is. A chain forged by the expectations of others and the conditioning of a society that values obedience over authenticity. Guilt is not your compass. It does not guide you toward truth. It only binds you to a life that isn't yours. The revolution begins the moment you stop mistaking guilt for guidance and start listening to the quiet voice underneath it. The voice of your soul, reminding you that you have the right to protect yourself. Guilt is heavy, but strength is light. And once you choose light, you begin to see how false the weight truly was, how unnecessary it is to carry the burdens of others at the expense of your own life. The world may never understand the depth of your transformation because society thrives on people who comply. Workplaces are built on employees who say yes to extra hours. Families often expect members who say yes to every tradition. Friendships sometimes rely on people who say yes to favors without question. But when you step back and say no, the balance shifts. At first, it may cause discomfort, even conflict. Yet that discomfort is not a sign of failure. It is proof that you are changing the rules of how you live. It shows that you are refusing to let your worth be reduced to usefulness. This is the real revolution. Not shouting against the world, but quietly choosing yourself, even when the world disapproves. Revolutions are not always loud. Sometimes they are silent acts of courage, invisible to others, but undeniable within you. Saying no is not rejection. It is direction. It points you back toward the life that belongs to you. Every no is a map, steering you away from paths that drain you and toward the places where your spirit thrives. Think of how many years are lost to obligations we never wanted, to roles we never chose, to agreements we never meant. Each no you speak reclaims those years, reclaiming hours, days, and moments that would otherwise vanish into someone else's vision of who you should be. This is why no is sacred. It does not just preserve your time, it preserves your essence. By learning to say it without guilt, you begin to build a life where your yes has meaning again. A yes given freely, after a no, carries weight, sincerity, and truth. It is not forced, it is chosen, and that choice makes all the difference. There is something profoundly empowering about realizing you do not owe explanations for every no. The urge to justify, to soften, to make others understand is simply another mask of guilt. True strength is found in the quiet refusal, the simple no that stands alone without apology. It is in these moments that you discover the depth of your self-worth. You no longer seek validation for protecting yourself. You no longer ask permission to set boundaries. You understand that your energy, your time, your inner peace are not commodities to be negotiated. They are sacred, and only you have the authority to protect them. This realization is liberating because it strips away the need to control how others perceive you. You stop performing for acceptance and start living for truth. And in that truth, you find a peace that cannot be taken away by disappointment or criticism. The revolution you are part of is not about conquering the outside world. It is about transforming the inner one. People spend lifetimes chasing approval, wealth, or recognition, believing those are the sources of strength. But true power is quieter. It comes from the moment you choose yourself without fear, from the moment you sit in solitude and feel whole, from the moment you stop apologizing for protecting what is sacred within you. This is an awakening, a shift from living as a reflection of others' expectations to living as a reflection of your own essence. And once you experience this, there is no going back. You may still feel the whispers of guilt now and then, but they no longer control you. You recognize them as old echoes, relics of a life you've outgrown. Your no becomes the anthem of your freedom, and your yes becomes the gift of your authenticity. In the end, the most powerful call to action is not loud, not dramatic, not demanding. It is silent, soulful, and deeply personal. It is the choice you make in the quiet moments when no one is watching. The choice to stop living for validation and start living for truth. The choice to embrace the discomfort of honesty over the safety of compliance. The choice to remember that your life is not a series of obligations to others, but a sacred journey back to yourself. This is not selfishness. It is survival. It is love, not just for others, but for the self you've neglected too long. The revolution is not out there, waiting in the world's approval. It is in here, unfolding in the chambers of your own heart. And it begins every time you say no without guilt, yes without force, and live each moment aligned with the truth of who you really are.